Fatiha. والصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد سيد الأولين والآخرين مدد يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم مدد يا وشاهد دستور ولا شاء الله فأزدى ساش محمد الرحمن مدد طريقتنا الصحبة والخير في الجمعية يضل الله من يشاء ويهدي من يشاء صدق الله العظيم. Allah Azze ve Celle istediğine hidayete eriştirir.
It is Him, Allah Almighty, who guides people to the right way, whoever He likes.
İstediğini ona nasip etmez.
And it is Him, Allah Almighty, who does not grant guidance to whomever He likes. It is Him, Almighty Allah, only who guides whoever He likes, and who guides not whoever He does not like to guide.
Nasip olmaz onda.
And those who have not received that blessing of being guided by Allah Almighty cannot be rightly guided.
Allah Azze ve Celle'nin lütfu keremi, hikmetleri sonsuzdur. Sırları sonsuzdur.
Guidance is a divine favor by Allah Almighty, and the wisdoms and the knowledge behind the way things are through Allah Almighty are endless.
وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا İlimden çok az size nasip oldu diyor.
Allah Almighty mentions that what we have been informed about is only a little.
Size verdim Allah Azze ve Celle.
Allah Almighty mentions that I only gave you a little of knowledge.
Bu ilimler sonsuz deryalardır.
Knowledge are endless oceans.
Allah Azze ve Celle'nin insanlar bu 2-3 tane bir şey yapıyorlar. Zannediyorlar ki bizden daha akıllısın, bizden daha bilgili insan yok.
While knowledge are endless oceans, people are so arrogant that when they come up with one or two things, they think of themselves that there's no one knowing more than themselves, and there's no one better than them.
Bir şey yok. Var. Allah Azze ve Celle'nin ilmi hudutsuzdur.
But there's more than you know. There is the knowledge of Allah Almighty, which is endless.
Sınırsızdır.
The knowledge of Allah Almighty has no limits.
Onun için hidayet en mühim şey, hidayette olan insan.
And what is the most important is to have received that divine favor of being rightly guided on the straight way.
Ötekiler kendilerini yüksek görüp de ve Allah tanımayız, din bilmeyiz diyenlere kıymet vermemiştir Allah Azze ve Celle.
And Allah Almighty gives and attaches no value to those who consider themselves big and important and think of themselves to be something while they ignore Allah Almighty. Allah Almighty gives no importance and no value to those who think of themselves to be something but ignore Allah Almighty.
Kim olursa olsun,
And this applies to anyone.
bütün dünya onun elinde olsun, onun kıymeti 5 para etmez.
Even if that person have the entire world within his hands, that person would not be worth 5 pennies.
Onun için Allah hidayet vermiş olan insan büyük bir nimettedir.
The greatest value is to have received the grace of being rightly guided by Allah Almighty.
Büyük bir güzel, büyük bir hediyesidir Allah'ın.
And if you have received that guidance by Allah Almighty, then you must know that you have received a great gift by Allah Almighty.
Hidayet hediyedir. Allah'ın hediyesidir insanlara.
To be rightly guided, to have received guidance is a gift by Allah Almighty. Guidance is a gift by Allah Almighty to humanity.
hidayete ermiş olan insanlara ondan daha büyük bir şey olamaz.
Those who have reached guidance, they could not have reached anything more or anything greater than that.
Dediğimiz gibi Allah'ın hikmetine akıl ermez.
But we must know that we cannot grasp or fathom with our minds the wisdom of Allah Almighty.
Allah'ın işlerine akıl ermez.
And our minds cannot fathom with the affairs of Allah Almighty and how He arranged things.
Bazı insanlar atıp tutarlar, meczup olanlar.
Yet people make bold claims and they say anything.
Başka meczup istediğini konuşur.
Yes, there are crazy people who may say anything.
Ama kendini akıllı zannedip de ondan sonra insanlara yok şöyledir, yok böyledir, Allah Azze ve Celle böyle yapar, şöyle yapar diye.
However, besides crazy people, there are people who deliberately make claims and speak big and tell people how things are and make judgments and explain and try to explain the way things are made by Allah Almighty. Those are people who are not crazy but deliberately make bold claims.
Kendi kafasına göre söyleyenler.
And these are people who make things based on their own thoughts and on their own likings.
Onların faydası yok.
But there is no benefit, no value in what they say and in those people.
Zararı var, faydası yok.
And there's harm in them and in what they say.
Allah muhafaza etsin.
And there's no benefit, nothing but harm in what they say. May Allah Almighty protect us from them.
Mühim olan, hidayette olan insan Allah'a şükretsin.
And if you have been rightly guided, then all you should do is just to be thankful and grateful to Allah Almighty for that guidance.
Bu Allah'ın lütfu keremine erişmiş.
Because if you have been rightly guided by Allah Almighty, then you have reached and obtained the grace by Allah Almighty.
Onun merhametine nail olmuş.
You have obtained the mercy of Allah Almighty.
O en büyük şeydir.
And that is the greatest achievement and accomplishment.
Allah'a şükretmek lazım.
And there's nothing one can do but give thanks to Allah Almighty.
Allah sabit kadem kılsın.
May Allah Almighty make us to be steadfast in following His way of guidance.
Hepimiz inşallah.
May Almighty Allah make us all to be steadfast in His way.
Allah tevfik. El-Fatiha.